Our next speaker represents La Belle Provence and the RCQ. Former athletic director of John Abbott College and CCAA president from 1986 to 1990, Mr. Glenn Reiter.
Good evening. Well, bonsoir. Jacques, c'est Jacques Cyr qu'on salue ce soir. Jacques, c'est un honneur pour moi d'être ici pour vous introduire comme membre du Temple de l'Annonay ce soir. Je travaille avec Jacques pendant peut-être 25-30 ans. En tout cas, c'est une expérience exceptionnelle. Et en même temps, nous sommes devenus des amis en même temps, je pense. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here to speak about Jacques tonight. And to go back to when he joined Sport Étudiant, or FAST at the time, back in 1974, Quebec had just completely changed its education system. So everything was in a bit of turmoil. The CEGEPs were there for the first few years. And Jacques was given the responsibility of running programs. But in terms of the CCAA, he was responsible for showing the Quebec colleges the national championship concept. Because in Quebec, you have 3 levels of sport in the colleges. So out of 50 colleges, maybe 25, I'm not sure now, are members of the CCAA. You have level A, AA, and AAA. So a college could have 14 teams and 1 team eligible for national championships. And so if you didn't make the playoffs, and so on and so forth. So Jacques had the challenge of showing people what it meant to be at a national championship, what it meant to win and to progress, and then the challenge of getting people to be involved as well. And of course, you had the language problem, the challenges therein, and Jacques was a master at working with all of the colleges and all the people, the Anglo colleges, Franco colleges. It was an exceptional demonstration. The challenge to do that, well, this went on for quite a number of years. In 1988, everything got shuffled. The government decided to put high schools, colleges, universities all in one lump. There were some changes, but out of that, Jacques remained. And from then until 2007, he was represented Quebec at the board meetings in CCAA and carried through all the things that he had planned to do. And the most important part is he had all of the knowledge gathered over all those years that nobody else had. And he made sure everybody understood it, and he was very clear about it, and they followed him. And Quebec has risen through this, done very well, not in terms of winning, I'm not suggesting that for a minute, but being a participant in all aspects of the CCAA. So we've had people in executive, conveners, and teams representing country, the province very, very well. So it's been a marvelous thing, and that for me was what a builder actually accomplishes, to bring something like that together and make Quebec a very, very important part of the CCAA. But Jacques hated politics. He told me this so many times. I just hate politics. And sport is politics, and when you shuffle cards and decks, you know, people get bounced around. But Jacques remained. However, despite that, he had a political bent to him that he's not aware of. We were in Whistler in 1990. And on play day in the afternoon, a bunch of us went by canoe across a lake and then up to a very, very narrow creek. I mean, really narrow. I was in a canoe ahead of somebody. Jacques was with another Quebec delegate behind us. And you hear this crunch behind us. And followed by, a Nova Scotia scream from Judy and Ken as they banged into his canoe. So we turned around, and there's Jacques. His canoe is stuck sideways, right, locked into a rock and a bush, and nobody can move. So in the annals of the CCAA, that's forever become known as the Bloc Québécois. Jacques claims he had no responsibility, but a lot of people don't realize that a mere 2 months later, the Bloc elected its first member in the House of Commons. So it's entirely your responsibility, Jacques. I just want you to know that. But the facts are there. As a builder, it's very obvious what Jacques has contributed. But it's always fun, too. And Jacques endeared to everybody and loved his approach. And it was so successful. And all the friends that we all made and he made. But there's always good times, and he can play some tricks, too. Don't say no. Don't say no. But those who were at this event last year may remember it. He and Yves Paquette were part of an event that quite astonished me in my first year as an athletic director, or second maybe. They were presenting an award for a retiring person at our AGM. And Yves was making the presentation. Jacques was sitting over there. Yves says, "Okay, Jacques, let's have the present, please." And Jacques gives him one of these deadpan looks. What are you talking about me for? I don't have the present. You got it. Now, they argue back and forth. And, of course, I'm trying to figure kind of a group am I involved in here. So Jacques finally gets, hell with it. And he goes and takes a painting off the wall. Hands it to the guy and says, "Here, this is pretty good. Take this." Turns out, of course, that was preset, but he got us really good in that. So with that, Jacques, I'd like you to know that this award tonight is for real. This is a lifetime thing earned by the contributions you've made. Quebec is extremely proud of what you accomplished and what you did to help build the Quebec sports program and relationships with the CCAA. Alors, en reconnaissance de votre contribution au développement du sport au Québec, et toute chose avec la CSA, I present Mr. Jacques Cyr.
Okay, now since Glenn has stolen half of my speech, Glenn, we should have talked before. Anyway, since you're the one that presented me, I have in my notes to say remerciement sincère à Glenn Ryder pour les gentils mots qu'il a élus à mon égard dans sa présentation. That's it. Okay, now, in the education system before 1967 in Quebec, there were seminaries all across Quebec where the young men studied for 8 years in the same school. 4 years were high school, 2 years were of college, and 2 were of university level, finishing with a Bachelor of Arts degree. But the main idea behind this recruitment was to get young men to become priests. Now, my fabulous journey begins in September 1960. When I was hired as athletic director at the seminary of Joliet, in Joliet, with another phys ed teacher, making us the first 2 layman teachers in the history of this college. That previously only had priests and Catholic brothers as teachers. So you can imagine what kind of work we had to watch out, because everything we were doing was against us. We had 2 strikes against us, at least to start with. So when we started our school year, no league existed and the students had no competition experience. They were really raw. So at the high school level, we worked with the local high schools that were around Joliet, and at the college level, we went with the Montreal region. The sports that we started with were men's and women's basketball, men's hockey and football. Eventually, we added men's and women's handball. I have to tell you here that during this time, the Quebec Sports Federations were running provincial programs with age limits or age categories and provincial championships, while the only high schools that had a sports structure were GMAA in Montreal and the English high school system in the Quebec area. That was it. But at the college level, 2 leagues existed in men's hockey and men's football, and were run by 2 different structures with their sets of rules and not with the different sports federations. You can imagine what kind of hectic things could happen, as Glenn was mentioning before. So we started some underground work. Having been president of Basketball Quebec for 3 years, secretary of the Football Quebec Federation for a long time, I can't remember the number of years, refereeing minor hockey in Joliet, basketball at the regional and university level, local and regional football games. Also, this gave me leverage to start making our way in a new structure that was starting to move. Now, in 1974, the new collegiate structure that was formed by the CJET group and approved by the government was dividing the province into 3 sections only. One in Montreal, one in Quebec, and one in eastern Quebec. So this screwed us up a bit, but also at the same time, the high schools and universities were going back to their own basic structure, and that we couldn't change. With this new structure in place, we were able to join CCAA, except for the badminton program, where we had to find a way to declare a Quebec team to the national championship, which took a few years because we had inside fights, but we managed to get the word out that we needed to be out there and get the kids to play the real game. In our memories, oh boy, we have lots of memories. One of the first one that strikes my mind was the first Bull Lore in the Olympic Stadium. Bull Lore, for those that were not familiar, is the provincial football championships for the CJET, for the colleges. And we think it was very magical for the players involved. And one of the reasons is the way they reacted when they arrived in that big stadium, where they came in with their buses and went underground and couldn't find their way out. And they did try to find their way to the field, except the guy that was in charge of security was a real maniac, because he thought he owned the field and nobody could touch it, nobody could be on it if you were not dressed as a player or an official or part of the group. And he was very happy every time after either a baseball game or any other type of game that was being played there, that nobody got onto the field and he was very happy. Except it created a few problems for us, but we managed to live with that. So after the game, remember, it's the Olympic Stadium. There was only the Olympics there. Nothing had happened after that. There was the famous stadium with the hole in the ceiling. There were no dressing room, and we had to manage to get chairs in and stuff like that so that everything could be, but I'm talking about the players now. So when they were dressed and the game was played, after a good half hour, let's say, all the activities were over. Nothing in the stand. Nobody in the stands anymore. There's guys that are starting to clean the place up. So we get the manager on our walkie-talkies, and he's telling his security guys to go on the field and get whoever is there on the field because it's disturbing. I don't know what, but it's disturbing him. So I grab my walkie-talkie and I tell him, hey, I have two guys with me and I see where the crowd is on the field. We're going to go, and if we need help, we'll give you a call. We were walking, and what we can see is no bums, no adults, they're just the players that had been in the game before. Some of them are still fully dressed. Some, they had took their shoulder pads off. And these big guys, some of them are standing up, some are lying down on the ground, and they're looking at that hole in the ceiling. Some are crying, but they're not talking, hardly talking. It's like a big silence. So me and the two guys, we started to walk around them and said, okay, don't take your time, keep on, and we have to get out of here because otherwise the big goons are going to come after us. So the kids understood. They all walked off, and there were, excuse me, no problems at all, no incident, and the big guy upstairs was very happy. Another memory that is pretty close, and it's all also in regards to the Olympics. We had a nice facility, and we were supposed to be hosts of basketball, badminton, and swimming. And we had an idea that maybe we could use the facilities to put basketball and badminton in the velodrome. But that idea, we need arms, we need the people to set up the floor for basketball. I mean, we have a floor. During the Olympics, we had a floor in the forum that was stacked away in the city of Montreal, and we managed to get the permission to use it. But we were the one that had to install the floor and whatever, everything else that went with basketball. So once we knew the floor had been delivered in the place, in the not the Bordor, but the Velodrome, Yves Paquette, you heard his name before, Gilles Cardinal, who was a full-time staff in our group, and myself, with two students, we show up to get the floor ready. All we have is piles of wooden floor. They have numbers under them. We have a plan that says number one goes there, number two goes there, and whatever. We've got to follow that. And we've got boxes of the screws that we have to put these things together. And to our surprise, the screws were only 1.5 inches. That was it. Except they had a big head. And so we said, how are we going to do this? So we worked half the night because it was early morning. We had to get to work. So we just had time to go back home and get changed, have a shower, and come back to the place because we had to finish it. We had teams coming to practice in the afternoon. But we had noticed in the morning, just before leaving, that the bounces were very good all over the floor. Because we had a couple of problems fitting the wood. But the thing that we hadn't remarked, because nobody was playing or practicing, it's when we got our first team in the morning that came out to practice and warm up and get ready for their game probably the next day. When they were taking shots at the basket, it was not close to the board. It wasn't close to the basket. It was miles away. And we started to see that it was on account of the height of that place. Because once you got your eyesight out of the seating, the seating, where do you get your measures, and also, what was the other thing? Anyway, so as soon, when the teams were coming in, we were telling the coaches to make sure that they work with their kids so that they can take shots and get the view, get the height, get the thing, so that they wouldn't shoot 30 times before hitting the board once or the rim. And that was our little experience at the Velodrome. Now, fun part for me with the FQSC and with the CCAA was that at the very same part of the year, we were attending one after the other. One, the CCAA annual meeting, AGM, followed the next week in whatever part of the province of Quebec where we had our annual FQSC and general meeting. And after that, this was a good part, we were getting ready for our summer holiday that I spent with my family, finally, who always supported me. This, I've got to make sure that I don't forget that. It's my wife, Louise, that is at the head table with me. My 3 children, 2 of which are not here because Anne-Marie and Bruno, they have young kids that are in school, so they were not able to be here. And the baby of the family, Antoine, he's here with me, and his wife, Kimberly. Thank you. So, I would like to thank the staff of the CCAA, starting with the Executive Director, Sandra Marie McDonald, Finance and Administration Coordinator, Mary Wickenweeder, and Communications and Event Manager, Rodney Wilson, for their great job of staging this wonderful celebration, a presentation of the new inductees into the Hall of Fame. I'm very grateful for this honor, and I thank you all very much.